Let's look at religious rights and potential harassment. You don't want to be involved in a situation where somebody comes to you and they have a heartfelt belief in their religious faith, and you don't want to dampen that. You don't want to examine their faith also, saying, well, I don't agree with your faith. That's not your role. If you're the employer, your role is to listen to them, and if you can, try to find some type of accommodation, because they shouldn't feel that because they have this deeply felt faith that they're being harassed in the workplace. Usually, harassment will take two different formats. One is towards the belief. I'll never believe that as long as I live. Okay, you don't want to have that going on in your workplace. Now, people can feel that on the inside. Okay, because they have their own deeply felt beliefs maybe as well. But that said, it's not their role to sit down there and provide judgment. It's their role to sit down and come to work. That's why we call it work. Harassment based on religious activism. Somebody passing out literature. Somebody encouraging them nonstop to go to their house of worship. If that happens, if somebody encourages them, that if that person says no, that should be the end of that dialogue, and it shouldn't continue after that. Under EEOC guidelines for federal employees, employees should be permitted to engage in private religious expression in their personal work areas. That goes back to actually having the right to decorate your own private workplace, provided it doesn't infringe on somebody else's view or perspective. For instance, if it's a cubicle, you can sit there and have something in the back of your cubicle wall if that's important to you. But if it's hanging over the wall, then all of a sudden it's infringing into the workplace and other people have to view it, and that's not the appropriate aspect of where you should be as an employer. They should be permitted to engage in expression with other employees with reasonable restrictions, but they should be permitted until they're said, it's offending me, please stop. They should then stop it, and you as a supervisor should make certain that you were involved in that dialogue as well. Keep in mind, religion, when people are religious, this is very important to them, to the point that wars between nations have been fought over the years, with thousands, if not millions, being killed over the process. You don't want to have a war in your workplace, so make certain you're paying attention to what's going on. To avoid liability, protect employees who don't wish to be approached by religious employees to try to be proselytized into their efforts with their literature or their invitations to the worship service. Protect employees with permissible religious practices who are given a hard time by those who believe differently. Well, I'll never do that. No, never. Okay, well, you can feel that. Okay, but soon as you start broadcasting it around everything else and trying to embarrass the employee who feels that way, then you have an employee that stepped over a line, and you need to step up and deal with it. And if you don't deal with it, then you're going to have a potential case on your hands, which you don't want to have. Ensure employees are given comparable opportunities to use workplace time and resources for their religious practices. If you have this group over here, and you may actually secretly support their cause over here during work hours or having a private meeting during work time, you might have to do something for another employee with a different religious belief. So pay attention to what's going on in all the practices. Unions also underneath the duty to reasonably accommodate conflicts. Union membership, payment of union dues. Some people have a philosophical basis for not paying union dues. Some religions prohibit even birthday celebrations. Pay attention to the different respectability that you are supposed to have listening to people about their religious preferences, because if you're in charge of employment law, then you are in charge. Okay, so pay attention. Union membership, with that, they're actually payment of union dues. If you're trying to force somebody, even if there's a collective bargaining agreement in place, if you're trying to force them to pay union dues, you may be well violating their First Amendment rights to freedom of religion. You also may be violating Title VII's prohibition against religious discrimination. You have a constitutional problem and a Title VII problem. It's not your problem, it's the union problems. They can, and by the way, they will comply. If not, they'll be facing the courts regardless. You have a right to enforce the aspect of your employees' rights to have freedom of religion and expression, even in this area as well. If it violates Title VII for an employer to discharge an employee, okay, then you need to sit down to pay attention to their beliefs. Make certain you go on formal record, because there could be a lawsuit coming down the line. This is an issue. The union will accommodate it. If they don't, then you will have to sit there and deal with the union, because of the fact that they cannot discriminate against somebody who feels it is a violation of their religious rights to pay dues for them. Religious rights. Take all employee notices seriously. If they come forward, okay, they have probably been on an internal conflict for a number of days, if not months, sometimes even years, frustrated about it. If they come forward, listen, try to have an iterative process where you sit down and go back and forth and talk about it. See if they have suggestions. If they're coming forward, my experience with this aspect, if they're coming forward, they probably already have a solution in mind as to how they can sit down and overcome the issue. If sometimes ask other employees if they can assist. Keep religious commentary to a minimum. If you're talking to an employee about their religious beliefs, my recommendation, if it's a private conversation, don't make it private. Bring somebody in to take notes, because you don't want somebody misquoting you and all of a sudden you're accused of being discrimination based upon their religious beliefs. I've had experience before, so I'm speaking now as an HR professional that has dealt with this. I always typically, if I have an issue that could lead to some type of formal complaint, I have a witness with me taking notes. Make sure employees understand that they cannot discriminate based on religion. If you don't like the religion, keep your mouth shut. That's what it is. Okay, you don't have a right to criticize them unless they're proselytizing, and then they should be going to the supervisor, not to the employee. Once they have a conflict based on religion, don't challenge their beliefs. Well, who would believe stuff like that anyway? Don't say that. That is not you as an employer's basis to say that. That'd be really cute as soon as they quote you in front of the jury as to what you said, and 3 of the jurors believe the same way. You'd have a problem then. By the way, it's also against the Constitution. It's also against Title VII. Make sure food, that you're sensitive to that. Alcohol, preparation of food, the way it's prepared sometimes, types of food, dietary limitations. Pay attention to your employees' needs. And if you're going to have fun and have food, make certain you're paying attention to all the dietary needs that you may be out there, and employees will be happy to share that with you, what they are. Alcohol, they can drink it, they can choose not to drink it, if that's what you have in your workplace. The types of food preparation, even the type of meats or no meats. Pay attention to all of that. It means something to them, and that would also sit down and be a positive thing if you were to have this type of an issue coming forward. Religious rights. If an employee has some type of aspect with the religious faith, as an employer, if you can accommodate it, fine. If you can't, then you can't. Okay, you are not required by law to change the function of your business to meet somebody's religious limitations. The example I gave of being closed on Fridays. Well, okay, if you can work around it, fine. If you can't, maybe that employee doesn't need to be there. The employee cannot question whether the religion is a good one or a bad one. That's their prerogative as to what they want to follow. But the issue comes down to is that if you can't accommodate it, then that probably is the difficulty. The employer should be conscious of religious conflicts when they're developing policies and workplace practices. That's a big deal. And also make some type of good faith effort to accommodate them. Employees can have personal items within their work area, provided it's not a distraction. It could be inside a cubicle, but it really should never be outside the cubicle. It should be in the personal workspace that they have. They're entitled to that. Other employees should not be distracted based upon their proselytizing their religion. If they complain about it, then it needs to stop. Once you provide an accommodation for this faith, be prepared for somebody of a different faith to ask you to make an accommodation for them. If you're using work time for a special meeting over here, you may have to have work time for a special meeting over here with a different faith. Be careful of religious conflicts in the workplace. Stop them if they occur. You don't want to have any major difficulties happening because of this issue, because these issues are deeply held, deeply heartfelt by the people that have them. If you can accommodate, fine. But if you can't, make certain that they're there to work in the workplace, and this is what you're expecting out of them, and this is what they were hired to do. Your work itself is your focus, and if you can accommodate, that's fine. if you can't, you'll have to work with them to try to find some other alternative, because your work is really to represent the employer in the process. Take care.